Ali Abdul. Now he has 6.5 million. My second client, Chris Williamson. Now he's a global figure with Modern Wisdom, his podcast, one of the best podcasts in the world. So for me, if success was working with 100 clients, and I'm on sales and I'm doing certain activities and that is successful and leads to like 100 clients, like is that a business that I initially wanted to build? Is a good question to ask.
If you're not connected to it, there's work to do to understand what drives you, why you're doing what you're doing, before you start thinking about scaling things, scaling content and things of that nature. So
if you have less than 5,000 followers on LinkedIn, you need a component of what you do where you are actively.
How do you go about experimenting and finding, let's say, winning content?
Audience growth is not linear. It's not a straight line. It's definitely more like a staircase where certain posts lead to followers.
How much effort does it take?
As a peek behind the curtain of some of the analytics we do with clients is the 80% is understanding the audience, it's understanding psychology. The 20% is the native strategies. Because you're going to wish in months and years you'd actually set this up. How excited are you right now about your industry? And how excited are you right now about your business? I reflected on this about a year ago, 12 months. I realized
So how are you finding it so far in Dominican?
what's not to like? Look at this.
Yeah. So,
Definitely never done a podcast on the beach before. This is the new standard.
Yeah, we found probably one of the most podcasty spots in Dominican. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're running a content marketing agency called Amplify. You've worked with Ali Abdal, Sahil Bloom, Jordan Peterson, Chris Williamson, Anderson Horowitz, and Tony Robinson. I'm very much interested in how you've got into this space in the first place.
Yep.
I'd like to talk a little bit about content marketing because obviously yesterday you gave an incredible workshop, an incredible talk about personal brands, building a personal brand and authority. So how did you get into the space in the first place and how you managed to get these names as clients?
Yeah, so the agency the business became an agency. So when I first was working as a social media manager in the pandemic, I had a full-time job. I worked for a video company. So my job would be, the videographers would go out and film content with founders. I was the in-house marketer, in-house content marketer. And I would take all the footage and just try and create LinkedIn content and what should be clips on LinkedIn. And that was like 5 years ago. So the model of repurposing content, so capturing in the filming day with the founder, he's very busy, getting all that content, capturing their insights, understanding what was their message, their core values, what was making this person successful online. That was what I had to see everything with. So that was my full-time job. I was like 20. And I had 2 freelance clients I built up, one which was Ali Abdul. I had about 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. Now he has 6.5 million.
Yeah.
And my second client was Chris Williamson as a referral through Ali, who again had about 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. Now he's a global figure with Modern Wisdom, his podcast, one of the best podcasts in the world. So I got a huge, essentially internship being like a creator behind the creators. Pandemic happened in the UK, I lost that full-time job, but I had these 2 freelance clients and I just grinded away to build what is now an agency, Amplify. Really centered, our thesis is really just trying to help experts unlock their knowledge. I think everyone should be sharing content online. Share your insights, hard-earned lessons. But specifically with our business, we work with founders to really unlock what they do. So many founders struggle with a congestion issue, so they have great ideas, they're doing incredible work for clients, it just doesn't make the feed and it doesn't reach more people. So the origin story was me doing the work as like that strategist with social media. And then it became an agency when TikTok came. So a massive wave of short form video changed the nature of the platform. Myself and Ali, working with Ali and Chris, my job was actually to make video clips. So Chris, who records podcasts 3 times a week, it was me editing video clips. The first piece of work I did was when he interviewed Jordan Peterson. So I remember Chris rang me, I'm on the way to London. He says, Joe, I've got an interview for you. It's with Jordan Peterson. Here are the files. Are you able to make clips? And we were just meticulous over a call of how the clips needed to look. How do you fit 2 people on screen? And then it became an agency because we could serve our clients better. Right. So I love the strategy. I would say I'm good at copywriting, but there's much better team members out there for copywriting and editing. And then the agency came for how can I serve the clients better? But it all stemmed from actually losing my job. Right. But I was always entrepreneurial beforehand, so I'd like to say it would have happened otherwise.
Right, amazing. During these initial few years of working with Jordan, with Ali, what would you say what your main lessons when it comes to content or personal branding? Obviously, I can imagine that it's actually on age, as you had this opportunity to work with with these big names.
Yep.
It was actually also very interesting how you experienced, if you had any pressure coming from the fact that you worked with these great creators. But first of all, what were your initial lessons about content marketing as you were working for them and learning yourself as well?
The leading creators, if that's a YouTuber or a podcaster, whoever is a professional in the space, if you're taking content creation professionally and seriously, then it's all a waterfall system. So the expert should focus on long form content. If it's writing, it's a newsletter, is it podcast like this, is it YouTube? If you capture your expertise at its core, it makes the job of a content partner to do everything so much easier.
Right.
So, and it doesn't need to be these big machines that you're building or assets for your business of a podcast or a YouTube channel, but you need to capture your essence of what you do, which is what you and Christina talk about. Because once that's done, then it's the job of a team or the job of creating successful content is to understand the nuances across platforms. And from working across all different platforms, we focus on LinkedIn now. I've done so much personally with Instagram, with our team have done X. It's all an art and a science. So once you understand the art of content creation, which is the psychology, so where is your audience, how they're using the platform, then there's also the science, which is how does the algorithm work and the more specific trends on that platform as well. So once you spend time across platforms, you begin to see it all with the same lens, and then there's just small tweaks to do per platform. But the way the founders can make content creation so much easier for themselves is by just contributing at the top, and then a team can work with you on the ideation, and your role is actually really more at the top of the process, and then the waterfalls down. So that an editor, yes, you want to have a say with how the editor makes the content, how it looks. You want to have a feel of your tone of voice with the copywriting.
Right.
That is stuff that you can outsource. So the biggest lesson was the best creators are systematizing everything. They've created a machine for themselves where they're constantly creating this raw material, and that's their job. AI is obviously trying to replace us with avatars and things like that, but that's not going to necessarily take off, in my opinion, for YouTube content or long form. The pendulum is always swinging and people want authentic and real. So the creators who've systematized a way to create long form content consistently are the ones then who, after weeks, months, years, are really building like a powerful asset for the company.
Do you have any influence on what's on the top of not top of the funnel, on the top piece, which is whether it's newsletter or long form video? Do you also help them strategize that? So is that typically coming from them, and then you help to break it down into everything else? Yeah.
So in the early days, we kind of fed two ICPs. We had the creators who had the long form piece nailed. So they had the YouTube videos or the podcasts. And then what we would do is we would try and create that, because it's very important that with a founder, you do capture that essence of what they do. So we would usually start to just interview clients. So we would go, okay, like if they don't have a podcast, how can we interview them for 1 to 2 hours per week?
Right.
Ask them about the origin story, ask them about why they got into what they did. So many founders at this retreat haven't shared their origin story online. Spoke to 20 agency founders here, and they haven't found the time, or they haven't seen the importance of sharing the stories of them as a person. Today, my agency Amplify is hired more actually by like investment-backed founders who don't really need it to directly contribute to their business. They are thinking about the next business they're going to build and how it can be more like a recruitment advantage for them. So is sharing what you do. Tried to drive home yesterday that if you're not doing it, your competitors are, and that should annoy you, should frustrate you. That if another founder is public facing in the industry, people are getting to know them, and that's really important. So with founders, we try and capture that long form. I would say it's got to be enjoyable. So if you're someone who doesn't see yourself writing, then whether that's other founders you can talk to, you can internally just have a bit of a culture where you record content. We record every meeting. I think that's commonplace nowadays. But you can capture that in different ways. It just can't be a congestion problem as much as it is nowadays for founders, because you're going to wish in months and years you'd actually set this up.
Yesterday, you also talked about obviously the difference between optimizing for followers and for leads. I come across a lot of agency founders and entrepreneurs who kind of mix the two, or they're not clear on what is it they're optimizing for, what their objectives are.
Yep.
How do you go about that, and like, what is the maybe methodology around here? How do you, for example, you know that we internally as Big Growth Group, we optimize for leads, and we are quite clear on that. But sometimes we also, Christine and I, would question whether we need to start building community, and how would that look? So, what's your approach here?
Yeah, so it's definitely common for everyone wants both, right? We want an audience of the right people, and then we want to get leads from that audience. Yesterday, we hammered home that you need to make a choice, to draw a line in the sand, to have a primary goal.
Yeah.
Yours is leads. Mine was, personally as a founder, was audience first, just because the way that I imagined everything was we were going for a very specific type of client who, when we worked with Ali, then it was Chris. These top creators are only really asking each other who do you work with and getting referrals. They're not online shopping for like, hey, who's the best videographer in Miami, or like, how do I grow my personal brand online? It's just, they're swapping messages. These founders and creators are operating in text, in groups, just trying to work with the best. So when we got into that circles of trust, I began to realize we could work with more of that premium clientele.
Right.
And then for Amplify, we could have like an ecosystem. My vision is to be more of an online educational company for personal branding with different products and services.
Right.
So if we keep the agency at a premium, productize what we're doing, take all of that expertise, and then bring it to more founders and entrepreneurs who would also value from that. So for myself, as an example, still working on those different offerings, I want to be building my audience in the interim to be ready down the future to have built more trust, provided more content for free. There's stuff I could have sold, but I want to almost cash in on that value of reciprocating in the future. I want to cash in on that value instead of right now. So there is that dynamic of how successful right now is your content at translating to business, and do you need to cast the net wider, or if you are successfully getting leads from LinkedIn, for example, like you are,
just double down on what works well.
Yeah, double down on the posts that are working right. Double down on the posts that are working well, and then at a certain point, if you know that with 3,000 followers, you're getting 3 leads per week.
Yeah.
You know what posts are leading to those leads. You have your funnel of content, top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of funnel at its core. There's more advanced strategies, but at its core, you can then understand, okay, well, if I double my audience, I should expect double the leads. If you have the conversion covered first. And then it's exploring with what top of funnel content is related to your business, which would be relevant to really reach the right people, warm them up, and then convert as well.
Given obviously then there is the right audience, how do you personally go about building your audience? For example, what we do on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is our primary source of leads, I actively go on SalesNav. I add people who fit my ICP. Now, I know our ICP quite well, so it makes kind of my job easy. But I know for the fact that a lot of agency owners who already have established businesses, they kind of confuse their ICP a little bit. So when it comes to audience building, I feel like they struggle. They don't know how to target, how to grow it. And I think they fall back on that idea that they need to build a community or they need to build a huge audience or following, because all of the gurus have the big following. That's how they build businesses. Is there maybe a more efficient or effective way of attracting your audience without falling into like shiny object syndrome?
I think at its core, that's a great strategy.
Yeah.
That's what I did in the early days too, and we do that with founders. So, for example, I'd say if you have less than 5,000 followers on LinkedIn, you need a component of what you do where you are actively getting a strong foundation of content. So if you have 5,000 followers, let's just say that's enough traction per post that you can generate. And by having in a high ratio of the right people in that core audience, you know that when they're engaging with your content, they also have other people, right? So founders know founders.
Yeah.
And that's obviously the beauty in agency businesses, that when you begin to work with an ICP and get amazing results, you are pretty much getting surfaced and teed up to other people like that. So I think people do, particularly with LinkedIn, they have maybe, like so many people here want to restart their LinkedIn accounts because they used to work for another company and they just got one type of ICP into their audience.
Yeah.
Businesses pivot, and then there's now not as helpful for them. So yes, I think that's really tangible and tactical to do. Where we come from is you have to own certain variables, which is just ensure the content is speaking to the right people.
Yeah.
And we didn't always do that work with clients initially, but now the first month of the process is really nailing down on the positioning and the avatar. And as you said there, you have to get specific, because 50,000 followers is powerful only if it's of the right people. What I would say is, though, on social media, no one talks about this, is you can't control who follows you. So you could be speaking to the right people, speaking to your clientele, but be gathering followers of someone who isn't there yet. So we'll never know for sure how powerful our audiences are. So what we try and do is control that you're putting the right messages out there, you're speaking to the right people, and you have to draw a line in the sand. So for us, or for me, I was speaking to founders and creators, and I realized the creators come in by referrals. So our outward messaging needs to speak to founders specifically. And if you do that with conviction, yes, that can be aspirational for people, but if they're not ready now, they can be ready in the future.
Right.
And I think if your audience, like for yourself, is growing, don't be too worried that it's not completely your ICP, because if you're saying with conviction, even if somebody never goes on to work with you, they are referring you.
Yeah.
You're coming to mind, your brand is so strong with Romans and Christina, your YouTube channel, podcasting, that's all out there. So let's just say, hypothetically, I'd love to work with you. Let's just say I'm not going to work with you. I am thinking about you and you're in my mind to refer to other people. So with Amplify and with what we do specifically, our philosophy is just make sure the message is correct. The content is content you're proud of, which is really up there with the best in the industry. You have a perspective on what other people are doing, and if everyone's going that way, you know what your true essence is and where you stand out. And then we just focus on all of the inputs, which would lead to the right outputs. And as you say, if it's not leading to leads, you then need to evaluate the specific content you're doing. And that, our culture, I think one thing we do differently is how much we experiment. We're internally, every single week, dissecting all of our content. We have assumptions of what we should be posting, what people are finding useful, but we're always evaluating that and just trying different things. And for yourself, you don't want to evaluate if it was getting yourself leads on a monthly, quarterly basis. You need to stay closer to that. But if you're getting direct messages, comments are saying this is really helpful, and you're asking people back, what else can I create? You can almost build your audience up with that audience, and then suddenly you're creating lead magnets, how you can reach more people like them, because you're understanding your ICP more of what's actually working.
Interestingly enough, yesterday we had a strategy session with one of the agencies from the mastermind, and one of their biggest objectives was to build a so-called innovation or experimentation engine. Now their idea was to experiment with different services / products that they offer to their ICP, their clients. And we kind of spent maybe like 20-30 minutes speaking about how to productize or how to build that engine inside of the agency, so they have it as the main, or one part of their essence as a business. I'm curious what you've learned from building your experimentation team, and how you've structured it. Is it something that you do on like regular basis? Is there a methodology behind it? How do you go about experimenting and finding, let's say, winning content?
Yeah, so what we experiment the most with is the top of funnel content. So the top of funnel content obviously is more specifically for awareness, it's views. Middle of funnel was really nurturing and educating what it is you do specifically. And obviously bottom of funnel content is more conversion. So on the balance, bottom of funnel content, middle of funnel content is more internal. So it's what you're doing as a business, it's your offer, it's how you can then lead people to that offer. So, but where we do spend more time, the benefits of a podcast on the beach, where we spend more time looking externally of what other people are doing, which we can take the essence of a post and why it worked and bring it to our founders or our clients, is the top of funnel content. So very specifically, there's tools like, let's just say Clio, which is a LinkedIn Chrome extension. You can be looking at people in your space, go to their profile, and you can actually see what content performed the best. So what we do very tactically for clients is we create a spreadsheet of like 10 to 20 people in their industry, and we track other people's follower growth per week. And we just do it every Monday. We just have the LinkedIn profile, the name, the follower growth, and then net follower change. And what we're analyzing is on a weekly basis, but you can see it more in real time, is what led to spikes in followers for other people. So we do so many, that's just one example of so many things we do. And then when we can see there's a spike in followers, we can go to their profile, see what post worked. And it's never stealing content, but it's understanding the philosophy behind that post. So say somebody did a massive lead magnet and it led to all this traction. There's all this really positive feedback in the comment section. It's really made a wave on a specific platform. Well, then we go, amazing. So how can we share value? What value do we have to package up into a lead magnet, for example? So we're externally seeing what's working. Another thing to do as well is that's in your industry. Who's doing a great job in your industry? How can you be comparing your growth rate to theirs? Ensure, understanding what content helps your ICP. Equally, sometimes understanding on the platform in general the same thing. So on a weekly basis, what are the trends that are happening? How can you catch them in real time to bottle up the magic? Because if people are talking about the massive changes in AI, it has a very short shelf life. Don't just jump on trends. So if your objective is leads, don't jump on the trends for the sake of jumping on the trends.
Yeah.
But always spot to see, okay, well, what could this trend do for your industry, and have a thought leadership piece on that. So when we work with clients, we're trying to understand and work with them on we build the engine of long form content with them if they don't have it already. The only time we ask clients specifically in a week in Slack to write content more on the fly is when we spot an opportunity for them, where we can capture that magic in real time. And then we can, as you say, create the content that has outsized returns. As a peek behind the curtain of some of the analytics we do with clients is like, audience growth is not linear. It's not a straight line. It's definitely more like a staircase where certain posts lead to followers, and that's understanding different platforms. But if I think about LinkedIn, for example, for the last year, there's like 3 posts which led to like 30,000 followers in total, and then like 300 posts which led to like 5,000 followers, right? It's just, you have to be in the game posting content consistently, and then you have to understand why do certain posts get a magnifying glass, understand what posts led to the right outcomes, and double down there. And people don't do that enough. And you can take inspiration from other industries and fields as well.
And for those who want to, or let's say aim to build such a content engine internally, how much effort does it take to build something like this? Obviously, that's why entrepreneurs and businesses partner up with you to help them do that, because it's a massive amount of work. But for example, our ambition is to maybe build a team, maybe a team with an outside team, or having, let's say, you and somebody internally build that engine. What does it take to, I don't know, have something in place that doesn't rely solely on the founder?
As I shared yesterday, so the way I would imagine a brand team, let's just say, so someone working on your personal brand, is you have the expert like yourself at the top, you have a strategist overseeing content writing, video editing, and then you need likely a designer, because you do need to understand that whilst the 80% is the message and the idea of the post, the 20% is what specific types of content, how does it look, what's the packaging per platform. So it could be an essay format, it could be carousels, like the packaging comes last, but obviously having a brand identity across platforms is useful, so with designers involved too. So this is how Amplify came to be an agency, because I was doing all of that work myself for multiple clients, and it was too much, but I wanted to be the strategist. So that's essentially the ideal scenario if you're a founder. Now the MVP is that yourself as the expert is that you could work with someone closely internally, as you said, to be your content writer. I think, content writer, content creator, they could interview you as well. So the MVP is having one person who begins to be a mini Romans, who is not being a watered down Romans. So the problem founders go with is they think hiring a ghostwriter means they don't need to be in the content process, but that's incorrect. You need to top and tail the process. So you need to work with this person, provide them that base material, spend 2 hours per week providing that base material. It could be voice notes, it could be going on podcasts, however you do it. But that shouldn't be the problem up front. You need to capture 2 hours of content for this ghostwriter. Their role is to create a first draft of the posts, to have an eye on the trends ideally of what's working, at least be measuring what posts you are creating, how they're performing. And that's the core model really.
Right.
Nowadays with our phones, there's amazing tools for AI where video editing is simplified now. So the video editor would come in where you really want to create more of a strong brand in your industry, and that's probably editing more the long form content to have a bit of a vibe, right? So look at your shirt right now, you're on the beach, right? This is saying who Romans is when he's not working, right?
Yeah.
And how this content's edited, the feel of the content is something as a founder you're going to want to have a say in.
Right.
So I would say at its core, you just need one person who you work with ideas on, they do the first drafts, and then you review that. And it should be their role then to see what's working, what's not, and just feed it back to you. And you could have a call with that person, for example, for 30 minutes a week. You're creating 2 hours of content, and their role is to do everything else.
Funny enough, over the past 2 weeks, I've been back and forth with our editor with regards to the feel of the content, because I was still kind of trying to figure it out and nail down the vision, the feel of it, and where we're heading with our overall branding as we're figuring it out, to be honest. And it's always been a very vague, difficult to crack thing, and I feel like it's I'm trying I'm a very aesthetic guy. I like great visuals.
Yep.
I like the classiness of contents without maybe overdoing it. Not trying to come across over sophisticated, but I want to set the standards for sort of premium level branding.
Yep.
Because that's what we are. We're not cheap as a service as well, so we want to make sure that what we talk about, the products and the visuals and the content is more or less aligned. And I've always found it challenging to align all these nuances, and I think it's more like a teamwork rather than me always trying to be in control of every single detail.
Yep.
Did you think that how do you do that for yourself?
Definitely. So we spoke about two paths. So you could be primarily doing this so you spoke about two different paths. You could primarily do this for leads.
Yeah.
So then you are, of course, representing your company. Now, if you had more than 2 hours per week, you would maybe have more input in what you're creating, and you could do these sorts of things. On the inverse, if it's more audience, you're taking maybe more shots on goal. You're just kind of, yes, you're caring about the quality of the post, but you're maybe creating more content in a given week, and it's a bit of a volume-based approach because you're just trying to grow that pie to be larger.
Yeah.
So I think if you're a founder, I think you're doing the right thing. I think it's quality first. When we say with clients 3 posts per week, if you want to go to 5 posts, the bar of quality should be set, and then once that's set, the 4th post should also be of equal quality.
Yes.
Right. So then the volume expands after that point. In terms of with editors, I do myself as well. I'm more of an artist, I'd say, so I care about the vibe of the content. The easiest way is to identify 3 to 5 people who are doing it correctly.
Right.
And when you work with an editor or anyone on your brand team, it's working with examples. And what we do is we usually select 3 examples, and we say, okay, so pick 3 people where if your brand was a combination, you merge those 3 people, would you be happy with Romans being the output of that? Right. So that could be, I like this person's presenting style, I like this person's editing style, and I like this person with the packaging of their content as well. If it's representing your business, then it has to feed into that 100%. So if you're capturing content, you do need to care about that. However, if a part of your vibe and message is that you're gonna open up your phone, and as a founder who's incredibly busy, you're gonna speak to camera yourself, it's more handheld, that allows for content to feel more authentic. So there's always a solution. So if you have 2 hours of content, and historically the editing has been a bottleneck, well, as a founder, you could do things more stripped back, and that would be more raw on certain platforms. When everyone's going to produce content more heavily, Alex Hormozi's content went so far into the huge production quality value, realizing that the messaging was actually getting missed. It's idea and your message first before this packaging, which is also editing. So as long as you're capturing at its core, you could shift to doing more off-the-cuff content in the moment. And that would be just agreed as the 2 hours per week you do. You shoot videos on the beach right now, or in between meetings, or you in your business, you're doing a workshop, you do a before and after video, right? So we have to work with founders, we have to meet them where they're at.
Right.
And But the role of a good editor specifically is they should have an eye for content. It's hard to also have an editor who just doesn't want to edit. So in those early days, you are looking for this copywriter who also has a bit of an eye for the trends and is analytical. And if you're looking for an editor and you've got a smaller team, you do want to understand, do they have taste? And that could just be getting a portfolio of their work, sharing examples with them, and just having a bit of a say. The beauty in that, it's upfront work. You know, your brand doesn't have to change drastically. Editing styles don't have to change drastically. But as a founder, if you don't want to hire an agency to figure this out for you, you're going to have a little bit more time involved up front, but then a good team will just be able to, the stabilizers can come off over
Download your
time.
brain kind of thing.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
I was going to ask you if it's worth, I wouldn't say trading editors, but supplying them with different ideas and visuals, so they develop that eye and taste as well.
Yep.
And that's, I guess, what I'm trying to do with our editor. He's a good guy and he definitely knows what great looks like. However, I feel like, just like everything else, like you need to be on top of the trends and kind of understand how to combine different tastes and different visuals together. So you create a more unique or more interesting output when it comes to video. So anyway, what I also want to talk about is actually more like business building and agency building, and how what's your approach? I know that your vision is to sort of shift into a creator-led business, and it's very interesting. It's like Christina and I have been quite curious about that model as well, and trying to understand whether this is something that we want to do in the future and shift from just focusing on lead generation to maybe leads and building a community, building an audience, and building other products rather than just service-based products. What do you think in the minutes, and what do you think you're going to be doing in the next 1 to 2 years with your business?
Yeah, it's a great question. So day one of this retreat, I was asked, like, are you looking to sell your agency? Like, what's the plan for the agency? And first and foremost, my internship from being the creator behind the creator, at this point, it's almost like a mark of respect to myself that I need to do this myself and continue to grow my own personal brand for the future. Like, we know how important it is for the founders that we work with, and we're in the process of almost having our team fractionally work on my content because it's setting ourselves up for the future. So many founders work with me, work with Amplify, where it's, as I said, it's not just for their current business, they're thinking ahead. So first and foremost, we want to serve more entrepreneurs and have to meet people where they're at, and obviously just charge for the implementation. Ali Abdul, who I worked with, was probably the gold standard in the industry of creating world-class free content. And I've definitely taken the same approach of him. And then what I want to have though is, for example, I was at a Tony Robbins Business Mastery event, 2,000 entrepreneurs at this event in person. And I realized, I turned around in the room, and if I only have an agency which is only helping a certain type of client, I'm not serving everyone in this room. And the more I got to know different people who are having the same problems with personal branding, and obviously as well, been heavily influenced by creators who have built up that leverage online and who have built something and sold it twice. And having, I think actually it's those skills yourself, or having experience of that model of productizing what you do, I think is going to be a skill and experience which is going to serve us as founders going forward. So first and foremost, I want to be creating a course. There's a creator called Jay Klaus who has actually an annual membership. So in terms of his community, he's actually creating a category where it's more an annual membership. He's very selective on who he allows into that membership as entrepreneurs. And it's a 12-month commitment. He will share openly the average revenue of the people in the membership. So it's more appealing to join this more higher ticket, high tier community. And I'm more enticed by that approach. So let's create a course, but then let's also have like a membership where there's so many clients who we've worked with for a year and a half, and we actually maybe helped them with that transition to bring it internally. But then the membership could be something that their team could find valuable as well. So there's so many communities right now at $200 a month, or just small communities, and the habit to check another app is just... people are exhausted at this point. So I think where all of this content creation is tied to your business, and if you've got a high bar of quality and it's for leads, it's understanding you can be inspired by the productization in the
I am
industry.
inspired. Yes. Like when I look at all these big creators, I was like,
Yeah.
freaking hell, this is so cool. Like you've got this huge influence and you get to build this awesome products, whether it's educational based products or service, whatever.
Yep.
Or even SaaS, And just like yourself, I get inspired by that a lot, but also I'm being aware of this not being in my own way at this stage of our business, so
Yep.
I don't fall into the sort of shiny objects
Yep.
syndrome. But also, it's very interesting what, let's say, people like Chris, Ali, and others do when it comes to audience building that is different, that makes them unique in their own ways.
Yep.
Obviously, there's strategies and tactics and everything else, but maybe you've spotted, an underlying philosophy. I don't know, maybe a pattern that allows them to maybe reinvent themselves. I don't know, build themselves in a such a way that they achieve that big influence.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say everyone else was trying to do it, but not quite getting there, or not, maybe they don't understand what it actually takes. What have you noticed?
One thing I've noticed even at this retreat is when people make anything look easy, you're not seeing all of the hard work that goes into that.
Yeah.
So with so many people online, the reason why, let's just say, Chris Williamson has become who he is because he wanted to be he saw what Joe Rogan was doing and all the incredible podcasters in the US and realized in the UK, okay, well, what are they doing? Well, Joe Rogan was playing, yes, everything that Joe Rogan's done in his career beforehand, but he was showing up 2 to 3 times per week as inputs. And Chris Williamson, as an example, has posted 3 podcasts a week.
Yeah.
Posted, not recorded, posted 3 podcasts per week for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's not obviously possible for all of us, but then we look at other inspirations like a Sahil Bloom, in around 2 years has gone from not having any presence online to having something like 300,000 followers on Twitter. And he just identified on one platform, what's the platform of choice? He's going to do Twitter. Really spending time to obsess over that specific platform, speak to the best, who you model from the best, also begin to provide value to the best, because then your come up can be accelerated. And then with him picking more of a model with writing, he didn't touch video until we worked with him with short form after he had a base on Twitter. So pick one platform, grow that platform up, and then you can begin to direct that attention, the true fans you've built, onto other platforms. So first and foremost, as you said, if it's for your business, it makes sense to double down on things like podcasts where people, you're talking about your frameworks. People can enjoy content from you, outside of what you're posting in real time. That makes sense. If your ambitions are to grow a huge audience, start firstly by absolutely dominating and owning one platform.
Right.
And I'm talking, you need 50,000 people, it could be 25,000 people, it doesn't matter, but it cannot be like 1, 2, 3K.
Right.
People here at the retreat are saying, I don't post online, I've got about 1,000 followers, how can I go on to be like one of these creators? These creators are...
They've been doing it for
doing it for a long time. So the thing is, you have to show up weekly, you have to let this compound into something you're proud of. Be happy with the messages you're sharing online. And know as well, so these creators actually, their model is to build an audience and to a percentage of that audience they're going to monetize from.
Yeah.
They're monetizing from the fact that they have attention, which is different to having a business, and then
Right.
content marketing is a distribution channel for what you do.
Yeah.
So it is different. So it's understanding, it can be a future aspiration. A thought exercise is to think, what book would you want to write in the future, right? So yes, your personal brand could specifically be for your business, but then it can become more of a ratio. So maybe 75% of your content is serving your business.
Yeah.
What's the 25% of you as a person? If you were going to have a book one day, what would the title of that book be?
Yeah.
For me, I'm really passionate of energy management. So let's just say I add a book in the future and people are asking me how it is that I've grown Amplify in my 20s, how I've reached these different people, how I'm able to do things like this. And if my answer was energy management, and that's a goal for me in the future, then right now I should be sharing more things around that topics.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be a book you write, it should come from a passion and a core. So for yourself, with your personal content, what is it that you're passionate about, and start there. Because if right now it seems too much to be building something which isn't just for your business, and you want to build an audience, but you know you need to plant the seeds now, well then start just sharing off the cuff things you're passionate about. Because over time, by seeing the responses, when people are engaging with that type of content, it's going to be a flywheel and it's going to inspire you more.
So cool. Christina and I yesterday, we talked about exactly that during your talk.
Cool.
And then I was trying to answer the question, what is the why behind everything, behind the content? Why should the audience care? And I was sitting down and I was trying to come up with a very logical explanation. And I realized that is exactly the kind of question that I ask our clients to understand their essence, understand their zone of genius, and how to help them make a shift. And then actually Christina looked at my answer and she said, Roman, this is great, but the thing that probably inspires you most, and she knows me very well, is that you help founders make the shift, and you help them understand what great leadership looks like, how to lead yourself, how to lead a business. And I sat down there for a couple of minutes and was like, yeah, I think I need to dig deeper into that and understand why do I care about that so much? Because on a day-to-day basis, it's just not a habit of mine to think about that why. And I guess Simon Sinek and the likes of Simon Sinek talk about the importance of why. And it's funny enough how that transcends not just into our lives, into businesses, but into everything else, even into content. Like if that is not aligned, and I guess if every single day I wake up and I feel quite energized and empowered because we get to do what we get to do, and we very much, I wouldn't say passionate, I don't want to throw that word around, but we're definitely interested and curious and energized by what we're doing. And when Christina and I would sit down and discuss, how grateful we are for everything that's coming our way, we realize that we are connected to our whys and to our purpose in a way. But we don't get to think about it consciously and deliberately on a day-to-day basis, and how that transcends into what we're building, and especially into our content. So the question that you asked yesterday triggered me to think about it once again. So thank you so much.
Good. Yeah, I think there are breadcrumbs in the work we've gravitated to. So I wasn't meant to build a personal brand agency, right? Yeah. It's all man-made. So what are the values in that? Like, what am I doing? Well, I'm working with people who I believe have expertise, and they are an expert in their field, and then we're coming at it from the lens of how are you adapting to share that online, and that's like the unlock for that person. So it's been a blessing as well. I love hearing how impactful who you've worked with has been with you, and you're counting your blessings of what's to come as well. Yeah. Same with me. I couldn't believe that in my early 20s I'd have exposure to these founders and things like that, and I got super passionate to care about this individual. When they talk to me and they share how they're helping people, they're sharing what they're doing in a given week with their clients, I'm like, the world needs to hear that, right? Like there's hundreds of other people, not from a leads perspective, there's 100 other clients out there for you. It's like you've created a transformation, you're doing things differently, and that needs to be distributed. So I think the why is usually already in the work we've done or the work we've continued to do. So if you're continuing down the path in your current business, well, there's another founder who would want to do a different business right now. Yes. And why would that be, right? So I think it's really interesting. Like, why are we pulled to certain things? I couldn't believe for myself that people could create all of this content for free. And then, for example, as you said earlier, you could get sponsorships, you could begin to monetize. So Ali is an example, which I think is the origins for where I want to go, to be honest, is that he was helping an audience and he never needed to sell to them, because at a certain size, sponsorships would say, you can monetize your attention. And then what he would do is he'd take the money and then he'd improve the production quality and then just provide better content for people.
Yeah, I love that.
And all he was doing, and it was always just being reinvested. And then because he is an expert, and because he showed up for long enough, he then built an asset for himself. But then, when you take on a speaking opportunity, you can monetize in those ways. You don't need to, cash in on your audience all the time.
Exactly.
I never talk about Amplify at the moment. I never, on LinkedIn, I've got 70,000 people on LinkedIn, and I do not deliberately try and funnel that to Amplify. I'm just, hey, if you can't work with us, no worries. Here's how you could do it in your business.
Yeah.
Here's what we found to be really useful, and I think as many as possible people out there should use it too. And of course, then you can charge for implementation.
Yes.
So I think those two things of just share everything you know for free and charge for implementation, and then build once, sell twice, are two core things that I've grown up in the last 7-8 years doing this, which philosophies that match who I want to be.
Yes.
Want to have a product or a course or material that if someone shares a problem they're facing, I'm like, hey, we've solved this already for so many people.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
Coming from a very empathetic place, and also sales detached.
Yes,
because
exactly.
I'm coming from a sales background. I enjoy sales, and I never view it as something that is manipulative, or it's for me, it's more like a second nature, to be honest. And what you're speaking about is complete detachment from the outcome.
Yes.
And operating from the sort of buyer's mindset, where you care about the person that you're speaking with, and if they don't buy, it's fine. And as long as you're fine, you never come across as someone who needs to make a sale, to make a transaction.
Yep.
Which then becomes a part of your personality, becomes a part of your brand, and then once you start scaling up, it becomes an extension of who you are and how you do business and how you build communities, and people feel that, and I think that is a fundamental piece.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 4 years now as an agency, and it doesn't feel like I've ever had a sales call, and that's obviously not true, but that's how it's felt, because it's and why I'm so passionate to build different offers is that I feel like we could do a better job to meet people where they're at more, and we just guide them along that way.
Yeah.
So definitely, and I think if you are a founder of a small business or a solopreneur, or you are two co-founders, but you're more in the early days, then you've got to enjoy the work you do, right? We leave these 9 to 5s to because we have a vision for a life we want to build, and there's that balance to just be aware of you want to build your life first and to have work to fit into that, and that one spectrum is a lifestyle business, and then there's actually, okay, well, how are you respecting the current business model and the potential of your business, and just knowing how much you do want to scale it. Mm-hmm. I heard a question which was, two questions, two parts of a question, which was, how excited are you right now about your industry, and how excited are you right now about your business? And I reflected on this about a year ago, 12 months. I realized I wasn't really scaling my agency. I wasn't really being so ruthless with sales. I wasn't trying to get as many clients as possible. At the time, it felt like more clients was more headaches, because it's more people I have to hire, being in a service-based industry. Just doing the agency, so if we hire 3 clients in the next month, then after that point, I've got to hopefully have already been building and training talent to be ready for more. So that balance of an agency was initially hard for me in the early days. And when I got asked this question, I thought, how excited am I with my business? Okay, maybe 3 years in now, I'm not as excited by my specific business, because every journey is hard.
Yeah.
The agency model, let's just say I was 7 out of 10 with an agency specific model. How excited am I and passionate about the industry? Well, helping founders, helping people share their knowledge online, it literally lights me up.
Yeah.
It couldn't be, doing this for 7 years, 4 years as an agency, it couldn't be higher. And it's crazy, but the shift in that moment was, if I just think it's still serving, if it's service, if we truly believe sales is service, and if I truly believe that we can help more people, and being in that room of 2,000 people, and even if it was a free lead magnet, I'd feel so much better internally that we're helping more people. But if a $300 course could actually solve their problem, why aren't I building that? It's literally a disservice to these people. And then the mindset shift just changed to me that sales is service. And then now I'm like, wow, okay, so the agency, I'm 10 out of 10 passionate about that because that's the initial form of our business. And then amazing, we can productize the agency. And that's like,
this is where you draw the energy from, essentially. I've got a good friend of mine whose name is Simon Alexander Ong.
Yes, I think so.
You know, he's a life coach, a great human being. He's got a book called Energize. And so the whole premise is that we need to be aware of what drives us and what energizes us in life. And there are by the way, there are other consultant coaches who speak about the same thing. And I truly believe that connecting to your source of excitements and understanding and trying to break down what specifically energizes you in life and in business is the true source of motivation. That is the real. Obviously, we can talk about discipline and everything else, and that has its place. But fundamentally, I feel if you're not connected to it, you know, there's work to do to understand what drives you, why you're doing what you're doing, before you start thinking about scaling things or building operations or scaling content and things of that nature. So, totally agree with you.
100%. Like, are you going to be happy with if success is, so for me, if success was working with 100 clients, if I'm just in an agency, we have 20 clients and then, you know, and I'm on sales and I'm doing certain activities and that is successful and leads to like 100 clients, like, is that a business that I initially wanted to build? Is a good question to ask. Before you have 100 clients and you've got a team of 50, 70 people and that's not what you were in it for.
Exactly.
So I think, it's understanding the business model as well, because certain business models are just an upfront decision. Like, I think I want the agency almost to be the end destination for Amplify. So it's actually our primary service. It's what we do. We help people with their content as their content partner. We do all of the things we've talked about. That's where we started, but I almost want it to be the last thing. I want someone to come in and for us to help them. And if they truly couldn't do it themselves, you know, because hiring is difficult, and if it is difficult to find these strategic hires, my vision is almost more because the social media manager nowadays has to be everything. They have to know video content, copywriting, interviewing. People are burning out in the industry because social media managers are burning out, and that was me, because you're being asked to do too many things. When short form came about, you now need to know about these trends in short form, and these big companies are giving tasks to individuals where it's multiple roles. So I would be passionate to say, how can we actually educate and train, even for a founder, their VA to become their internal like content writer? That's one step. Like, that will help a lot of people. And then next, how can we actually understand and modernize the social media manager like role nowadays? Because what I come from is almost more like frameworks. Like, once you know how to grow on LinkedIn, you would know how to grow on TikTok. Because the 80% is understanding the audience, it's understanding psychology, what captures people's attention, what's engaging, gathering attention, to be honest, and the 20% is the native strategies. So once you do that, if we can train people on those core things, we could actually instead say, look, like, yes, we'd love to work with you, but maybe it's better for you that you actually train that person internally. And that's actually a larger business model for us as a company. It's more aligned with my values as well.
If you and when you do that, I think you'll redefine a lot of the misconceptions and status quos about how to build content teams, how to build social media teams, because I totally agree with you. It's a very demanding role in itself. And I think there is not much training or coaching going on. But like people, maybe, you know, businesses, agencies don't really care. They just want to extract the resource, arbitrage the resource, you know, to make profit. But fundamentally, if you look at like some of the biggest agencies, not agencies, but the businesses who actually care about their people and invest in their people, invest in L&D, and that's what we're obviously passionate about as well, is they may not win in the short term from a gross profit perspective, right? But if done right, if done with the right intention, over the long term, you get to build something of a value and meaning at bigger scale, because you consider one of the most important factors or parts of the formula, which is a human being. Which is a huge variable. You know, it's not as easy to change as a process or a system. So the ambition that you have is incredible, man. So I love it.
Yeah, it definitely energizes me, and I think this is, if I'm the founder of this business, that's the direction we're going in, because I don't need to do a different business. There's so much like service built into this current business, and we can help more people.
Yeah.
You've always got to understand like that, you know, for example, you have a co-founder, and if there's someone I could partner up with to scale an agency specifically, for like in the future, maybe then our current business becomes a part of, it's almost more like a holding company. So like Amplify can really have these different offers and be like an online powerhouse and serve personal branding for entrepreneurs, serve entrepreneurs in all these different ways. And then the agency almost becomes its own thing. And then in the future, I could have a partner who does want to specifically grow that agency and scale that agency, and is hopefully is equally passionate to spin up those teams for businesses, or to take all of that headache away from them, because we've solved that solution. As we expand and obviously as we grow, our businesses can take different forms, but I think it has to stem from why we did all of this in the first place. We could both have completely different businesses, right? Like, it's really interesting to think of the inverse sometimes.
Yes.
Like, what businesses have I not chosen to do? Like, why do I want to be remote versus like have a team in person? Why is it that I've been drawn in a certain way? And just very quickly, what we do is with clients, there's a visual for the content strategy, like it's a tree, which you saw yesterday. So like, the one part I want to relate back to is, in this tree visual, like you have core values, which is like the roots of the tree, and that's who you are as a person, to be honest. The trunk of the tree is where we share that the content pillars in your content comes from. That trunk of the tree, every time we work with founders and we understand what is a personal brand statement, the trunk of your content, which all ideas flow from, this is where what we've discussed comes out, because it's the questions I ask is, why are you doing this current business? Like, why did you choose this industry? Why are you trying to serve these clients? And then that inevitably has to be outlined before we start the content creation process.
Yeah.
If as a founder, it is stemmed from a deeper place, content creation or creating content, being public facing, building authority isn't work, it's more closer to play.
Yeah.
If you have if you're more sales focused as a founder, it would be really exciting at the end of the week to do a recap of all of the great conversations you had. What was surprising when you spoke to prospects this week? What was one problem your team fixed? What's one amazing thing in your culture you're proud of? Like, founders can share content in a way which does come from energy and more out of an internal place. Instead of thinking, oh, Joe's asking me to do 2 hours per week of content creation, when do I have the time? That's coming from force, it's not coming from an internal pull.
Yeah. From something that is exciting to them in the first place. And
yes,
that's why there's quite a bit of friction and resistance when it comes to creating content, because, you know, I think people feel like they need to force it.
Yes.
So, man, I think we need to go because we've got the snorkeling thing.
You're snorkeling.
I see people waving to us that we need to wrap up. I think we could definitely talk about content and business and vision for another few hours.
Yes.
And potentially we should. But man, it's been such a pleasure having you. It is always fascinating to talk to you. You're a source of inspiration, a source of energy. So thanks a lot, man.
Thank you. You're a true expert at what you do, and it's a pleasure to see more behind the scenes of what you do as well and how you operate as well.